This episode is sponsored by the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Upcoming featured entertainment includes Buck Cherry on the 13th and Soulja Boy on the 21st. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Kimberly Perry, formerly of the band Perry, brings her solo tour to Annapolis, Maryland this Sunday night. She joined me to discuss her journey from band Perry hits like If I Die Young and Better Dig 2, to jamming with Fall Out Boy at CMT's Crossroads, and now her first solo album, Super Bloom. Hey, Kimberly Perry. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
We are talking because you will be performing as part of the third annual Annapolis Songwriters Festival. It runs now through Sunday, and I believe you will be performing on Sunday, the 15th at Ram's Head, which is such a cool spot. Thanks so much for doing this. I know that we just talked to the festival organizers yesterday, and it's put on by the same folks that did the Key West Songwriters Fest. So let's start there. Have you ever been to that or played that? That might give a preview of what's kind of a vibe this might be.
I actually have not played Key West. I have always sort of lived vicariously through Instagram with all my friends who are down there. So I was super, super excited to be invited up to Ram's Head Tavern. Thank you guys in advance for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, it's sort of the idea is the same festival concept, except they're doing it here in Annapolis, Maryland. There's going to be, I think, 140 artists at 15 different venues across the city, so, imagine like people just walking with guitars on their back around the street. It's going to be awesome. I know last year I talked to Michelle Branch when she came for the same festival, and then this year it's gonna be Lee Brice and Natalie Hemby of the Highwomen and yourself and Mark Cohn. He'll be walking in Maryland. How exciting is it to be that you're gonna be in the same town with all of those folks? Rubbing elbows with all of them. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, those are some of my very favorite songwriters. In fact, Natalie Hemby, I remember she was one of the first co-writes that I ever had in Nashville when I started writing in the town. So, I feel like the amazing songwriters that come from our hometown in Nashville, it's just a special, special community. And anytime we get to kind of break it down on stage to the stories behind the songs and sort of the atmosphere of how we wrote it in the room that day, getting to tell that and then play the song is I think it's such a cool experience, whether you're a fan or the artist on stage getting to tell that story and sing that song.
Oh, absolutely. And their names, Lee Brice and Natalie, you know them from their stuff, but you almost forget how many songs they wrote for other people as well. You know what I mean? Like Lee Brice wrote More Than a Memory for Garth Brooks. Natalie Hemby, in addition to the Grammy-winning Highwomen stuff, she, I think, has been nominated for CMA Song of the Year like 5 times for Miranda Lambert and Little Big Town and Casey Musgrave. So that's what's cool about this festival is we're going to get to see the songwriting craft. So do you plan on sort of doing that? Let's talk about sort of your set list. Are you gonna be sprinkling in band Perry between stuff from Bloom or any new songs?
Yeah, so we're kind of weaving this tour and this stop in Maryland. It's part of the CMT Next Women of Country tour for me. So I'm going to be playing that set list. It's a little bit of everything. Yes, just like you said, I got to put out my first body of solo work last October. It's a project called Super Bloom. So I'll be playing some songs off Super Bloom. Of course, all the hits from the band Perry. It would not be a set without those. And then I'm going to sprinkle in a couple things I've been writing and working on in real time. I'm going to play this in the set as well.
Awesome. Well, I can't think of a better singer-songwriter artist to participate in the Songwriters Festival. It fits right in perfectly. It's going to be great to hear your new and recent stuff, as well as the greatest all-timer country hits, if you ask me, from the band. Awesome. Well, in addition to teasing the show, whenever I have someone on, I'd love to sort of paint your super hero origin story too. So I know you were born in Jackson, Mississippi in early '80s, and growing up with your future band Perry members, Reed, and Neil, all in the same.
Yeah.
your brothers. What was it like? What was it like growing up in that house? Were we all singing together at a very young age, or at least listening to music all the time? I want to know the roots.
We really, I think the very first foundation was we did listen to music a lot as a family. In fact, the nights that I remember the most now that I'm at the age I'm at now, I remember every Saturday night, our parents would listen to a lot of public radio. And even in Jackson, Mississippi, every Saturday night they had 2 hours of bluegrass.
Mm.
And so we would always sort of like our dad would grill some steaks and our mom would make a potato salad. And we would all just sort of like sit around and listen to these 2 hours of bluegrass together every Saturday night. And so that was really my first love of country and Americana music was born there on public radio when we were just kids. The very first time we ever played music in our living room together, I was 15 years old, which would have put Reed at like 10 and Neil at 8. And we just started by learning cover songs and playing in our living room. It kind of grew from there. Our dad would book us at everything from shrimp boils to birthday parties. Our opportunities just kind of got to snowball from those early playing experiences. But that was a typical weekend in the Perry household growing up.
In the Perry household. I love it. Well, and
Yeah.
in a place like Jackson, Mississippi, Johnny and June, the shrimp boils were
Yes.
probably hotter than a pepper spray.
Definitely.
That is great. That is great. All right. And then I'm sure you've told the story a million times, so we could, an abridged version of it if you want. But how you were actually discovered wasn't it like Garth Brooks' manager to sign with Republic Nashville for that self-titled debut album in 2010?
Yeah, Bob Doyle was our manager, such an amazing guy. And we had actually recorded about half of a record with Paul Worley, who produced The Chicks and Lady Antebellum and even Nitty Gritty Dirt Band back in the day. He was the one that really found If I Die Young and this little obscure band that had written and recorded that song. And then he guided us through, I mean, honestly, the entire recording of our first project. And then, yeah, Bob heard it and loved it and played it for our record label, and the rest is history.
I love it. Whenever someone mentions the Chicks, I am brim with pride. I always have to say, my wife opened for the Chicks back in the day.
Are you serious? I love the Chicks.
They're awesome.
My all-time favorite. Yeah.
Oh, they're great. Well, you can actually see, I'm sure you can, I think you can see the influence. There would be no Banbury without the Chicks, and it's awesome.
Totally.
Well, that's great.
Totally.
Well, of course, If I Die Young goes #1 off of that. And man, to me, it's an all-timer. Like whenever they do those, top 100 country songs ever. I mean, I think the last time they did it might be before that song even came out. But if it had been out, I think it would have made it. To me, it's an all-timer. Talk about sort of just putting that one together and and just the line, funny how you die when people start listening. Sometimes you got to be gone.
It's so true. It's so true, right? It was like so many artists have become massive post their death. And that's really kind of the inspiration behind that line. And I definitely wrote it in the season before we ever had any songs on the radio or anybody showing up at shows to sing along. And I think that was really kind of the heart behind If I Die Young. As I look back, I wrote it after we left Jackson, Mississippi in the Deep South. We ended up moving to the mountains in East Tennessee. And so I actually wrote If I Die Young at our home in East Tennessee. And for whatever reason that day, I was just daydreaming about life and all the things that I wanted to see come of it. But I also wanted to be content with where things were in that very moment, and If I Die Young is really ironic with its title, a song I wrote about life and making the most of every moment and being content with right where you are, because you never know. You never know what's going to happen. So that was really kind of the heart behind that one.
Oh, it's just it'll rip your heart out, but it's also just beautiful visual storytelling, man. Bury me in satin and lay me down on a bed of roses and sinking in the river at dawn. You can just picture it happening as our tears are falling. It's a great one, and I know it earned you a Grammy nomination for best country song, and Losing to That Damn Lady. Need You Now.
I know.
That's two all-time songers going back and forth, so I can't go wrong either way. But I mean, you're off to the races at that point. So tell me about then going into that second album, Pioneer. Pioneer then. That record proved you could keep it going, which gave us what? Don't Let Me Be Lonely and Chainsaw and went number one with Done and number one again with Better Dig 2. But Better Dig 2 specifically, tell me about, penning that, because that's like a stomping fun, that's an upbeat one, like kind of opposite of If I Die Young, Better Dig 2 kicks ass.
Yeah, Better Dig 2 is so cool. It was actually written by a couple of friends of ours, Brady Clark and Shane McAnally and Trevor Rosen actually wrote Better Dig 2. And I'll just never forget the first time that they played that song for us and were inviting us to record it. I was just like 100%. This feels like the cousin to If I Die Young. And when it came time to record Pioneer, we had really advanced from playing smaller rooms and theaters to like arenas and amphitheaters. And so we knew that we wanted kind of a bigger sounding project with a little bit more country rock elements. And so Better Dig 2 felt like the perfect thread between what we had written and recorded on our first album and where we were headed with Pioneer, and really embracing some bigger sounds. And it just was like the perfect bridge between those two projects.
Oh, and then no surprise that Brandy Clark co-wrote that one.
Yeah,
My wife actually
amazing.
saw Brandy Clark opening for Tanya Tucker at Wolf Trap a couple years back, and unbelievable,
Amazing.
unbelievable.
She's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, at this point, you're starting to get the attention, beyond just the country realm, because you're up for Best New Artist at Grammys, I think, right? Up against like Bon
Yes.
Iver and Nicki Minaj, J. Cole, how I say it, Skrillex. So
Skrillex,
you're
yeah.
starting to transcend just the country genre at this point. But before we get to that, because we're starting to transition, I want to go into your pop stuff too. But I guess we do have to hit. You did win a Grammy for Best Country Duo for "Gentle on My Mind," the Glenn Campbell documentary. I'll Be Me. So memories of paying tribute to Glenn really quick, because he was a crossover country star too. But yeah, memories of that real quick, and then we'll go into the pop stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that was such an amazing experience. I'll never forget. Our label at the time were the ones responsible for putting that soundtrack together. And they invited us to record Gentle on My Mind, which is to this day like one of the most beautifully written lyrics of any song of all time. I just think it's so gorgeous. And so yeah, we ended up walking home with our very first Grammy from Gentle on My Mind. We had played it the year before on stage at the Grammys when Glenn Campbell got his Lifetime Achievement Award. And my favorite memory from that is that when we were rehearsing, I was so nervous. Like we had never played on the Grammys before. And we looked out during the rehearsal on the front row, Paul McCartney was sitting there and he was recording our rehearsal with Glenn because he's a huge Glenn Campbell fan. And I just remember like nudging my brother Reed, and I was like, look, we're on a Beatles cell phone. Like, can you believe that? Like we've definitely arrived. And it was just such a special moment. And then to be back the next year and get the Grammy for our own version of that song was just, it's otherworldly, really. There's so many moments in my career I've been like, am I in the Twilight Zone right now? That I can't believe this is happening.
Oh, absolutely. That is all time stuff with Paul McCartney there in the audience. And not to mention the great Glenn Campbell. I mean, come on,
Glenn Campbell, yes.
that song that you covered of his was right before what, Wichita Lineman and
Yeah.
Galveston and Rhinestone Cowboy. Like that was before a lot of those big hits. So that's great.
Yeah. Totally.
Awesome. All right. Well, as promised, let's start going into the transition here, the transcending of country. The first time I at least remember at least thinking Ben Perry could sort of break out of country was that Fall Out Boy duet on CMT
Mm.
Crossroads. If you can find it, folks, I don't know where it is, if it's on streaming or YouTube or whatever, but if you can find it, you have to go back. How awesome was it performing in that? I mean, hearing them do your stuff and you do their stuff, and then the combinations it's out of this world amazing. But just memories of what was it like working with them in that one special moment?
Honestly, that's one of my favorite things we ever got to do. I mean, those guys are just sweethearts, great fellows. And, before you even obviously see the taping, we got to do like 2 days of rehearsal and we're just hanging out and learning each other's music. And they have a great love for country and the country songwriting format. So it was just, I love those crossroads. Like if in the future of my career I ever get to do them again, I couldn't wait. It was just such a blast. And yeah, I think our appetite was a little wet with that too, with pop music, because it was such a fun like way for us to hear our band voice covering Fall Out Boy songs.
Absolutely. So whether you intended it or not, maybe started to plant a seed of let's see if we can try some other genre here. All right, and then right around here is when the shift starts happening. Like, because I know you and your bros with Van Perry were like starting to do some pop stuff, like Live Forever and Stay in the Dark and Comeback Kid.
Yeah, I mean, our first foray on pop radio was If I Die Young. I mean, we were both on top 40 and Hot AC with that, and so obviously, anytime a country song gets to grow even out of the genre after it's gone number one, it just expands your audience. You know, you're getting to tour more, you're getting to fill more seats, and that was always such a wonderful experience for us. You know, creatively, I think we're in a season at that time that felt like, hey, let's explore, let's figure out everything we want to do with our voice. And it was never our intention to let go of country, but I do think that sometimes on the pop side of music, you know, you have a lot of people who are interested in you know, helping you grow your sound. And then sometimes it feels like you're getting a little too far away from home plate. And so it's been really cool, really, since 2020. Reed, Neal, and I have been individually and collectively at times writing songs that brought us back home to country music. So with my project with Super Bloom, it was really me with my solo voice getting to go like, hey, I've had such an amazing journey. I've gotten to explore a lot. And I'm all for that. I'm all for experimentation. There's a lot of country artists doing it right now, and vice versa. A lot of pop artists experiencing country. But for me, it's just always wonderful to know where the pillow is warm and where home is. And for me, that's country music and being a country singer songwriter.
So well said. Yeah, I mean, we've seen it. It's like a two-way street, right? We've seen Darius Rucker come over and dominate in country music. We've seen the other way, Taylor Swift go. I mean, come on, the
Yeah, for
biggest
sure.
artist on the planet started in country, singing about Tim McGraw, and now she's just selling out pop stadiums. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not everyone always is like, oh, Garth Brooks, Chris Gaines. They think back to that, but if you really think about it, there's a rich history of Dolly Parton inspiring Whitney Houston. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
it
for
goes both ways
sure.
all the time. So all the best as you continue to explore and experiment in different genres. Well, you mentioned when Van Perry, I guess last year went on the quote unquote hiatus for you all to do solo projects. So you mentioned Bloom. I guess it was like an EP earlier in the year that eventually became Super Bloom, right? So it took a couple months to
Yes.
fully bloom. But what was I guess the leadoff single that was "If I Die Young" Part Two, right? So what inspired that?
If I Die Young Part Two felt like a really cool way to reconnect the dots with my country fan base, my country home, if you will. And I thought it would be an interesting concept as the girl who wrote the original version over a decade later. Like, what's she thinking about? Does she agree with all of those sentiments in the early song? And I just loved the idea of saying, hey, there's never going to be such thing as enough time. Like that was the one comment at the first write that I was like, hey, I've lived a lot of life between now and then. I've loved so deeply. And here's what I think now. So it was such a cool thing to get to write part two. And I loved all the comments on socials that were like, hey, we all grew up together. We grew up with this song. And here we are at part two of life and of all of it. So that was really special one to lead the charge with.
So you're saying you haven't had just enough time? You haven't had enough time.
Exactly.
I love it. I love, by the way, how in that song it's enough time, like it's soft and subdued, and then by the end it just you belt it. That's great. You would call back to that here in this answer to that question. Thank you. Well, in
Thank
addition
you.
to before we go, I want to give you a chance to promote any other songs. I mean, we If I Die Young Part Two, it was I guess the first like release off of Super Bloom and Super Bloom, but like what other ones on that might you be playing? If you want to name drop a couple of the other songs that we should look out for if we come see you in Annapolis, what are some of the newer ones you might be playing?
Yeah, I mean, Cry at Your Funeral is one of my favorite ones off of Super Bloom. We'll be playing that one, and a couple of new things that I've been working on as well. I always love to try out new songs in these acoustic format shows. And I'll definitely have a couple in hand in Maryland.
Awesome. So this is like basically because Super Bloom just came out what late last year. Yeah. So this is basically still your touring of that album, right? It's not like what are you
Yes.
working on next? This is the next. This is the brand new stuff, right?
Yeah, it's the brand new stuff, but I mean, music in 2024, it's a different world. I feel like you're kind of always on that cycle of writing and releasing and getting ready to put out the next thing. So I would love to get everybody's opinions on a couple of new ones.
Awesome. What is the when wheel? Speaking of, if you're saying the hamster wheel is a is the nature of the beast. So is there a new one coming out like later this year, next year? Give us a teaser.
We do have some plans up our sleeve, but nothing that I can share yet. Just everybody keep posted, keep your eyes peeled, and yeah, maybe we'll share some info on stage. I don't know. I don't know when exactly we'll drop the news, but everybody will keep you posted.
Yeah, but you got to go to the Annapolis Songwriters Festival at Ram's Head on Sunday to see any potential breadcrumbs of Kimberly Perry's next project.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I have to ask in the final seconds, in addition to your solo stuff, do you plan for the band Perry to ever reunite down the road, even if it's like next year or 10 years from now? Is there plans down the line, even if it's like a decade from now, to get back for a country reunion with the brothers?
You never know. I've loved living my life with my brothers on the road and the band Perry, and even with our shows. I have just loved getting to be in a band with them. So you never know what the future holds. Super Bloom, I do consider it a solely country project, and it is my return back to my country roots and coming back home to Nashville. So 100%, anything coming from us in the future will be in the country lane, if you will.
Awesome. So you hear that, folks? So we can promote this as like your return to country. It's solo, but and then maybe down the line, the brothers might join in. But folks, this is, if you've enjoyed the different genre experiments and always see what Kimberly Perry's up to next, this tour right here in this show in Annapolis is going to be her return to glorious country music. So you don't want to miss it. Awesome. Well, thank you you've been so generous with your time. We'll let you run, but thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely. Again, everyone, it's the Annapolis Songwriters Festival in Annapolis, Maryland. You can see Natalie Hemby on Saturday at Ram's Head. You can see Lee Brice Sunday at Annapolis City Dock, Mark Cohn at Maryland Hall on Sunday, and then it's all going to culminate with Grammy winner Kimberly Perry of the band Perry doing her solo stuff at Ram's Head on Sunday evening. So thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you so much. Talk soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.